You see, when a woman realizes you've moved on, the very first thing she feels, before anger, jealousy, or regret, is displacement. It's a silent but seismic shift in her internal world. You were once orbiting around her, giving her attention, emotion, consistency, perhaps even devotion. Whether she acknowledged it openly or not, she knew you were there. She felt it. That subtle knowing gave her a kind of power, a sense of comfort. But now, emotional gravitational pull has vanished. You've emotionally excited her universe, and without warning, she's no longer the center of it. It's not just that you're no longer texting her, calling her, or reacting to her breadcrumbs. It's the fact that you no longer need to. You've taken your energy back. You're no longer seeking her validation. And that, psychologically speaking, is the most jarring thing for her to experience, because human nature at its core is addicted to attention. We don't just crave love, we crave being wanted. And for a woman who was once the focal point of your attention, seeing that spotlight turned off can feel like emotional exile. There's a phenomenon in psychology called object permanence, the idea that when something disappears, it still exists somewhere. In relationships, principle becomes distorted. People believe they can exit your life or mistreat your energy, and you'll just stay emotionally on call forever. You become a safety net, a placeholder, someone who will always be there, just in case. But when a woman sees that she no longer has access to that emotional safety net, her sense of control begins to erode, and it doesn't matter how strong, independent, or emotionally detached she appeared to be. Losing your emotional presence disrupts her internal balance. This is where ego comes in. Not confuse ego with arrogance. Ego, in this context, is the internal narrative she's built around herself in relation to you. It tells her, he'll never stop loving me. I know he's moved on, but deep down, I still matter to him. But when your actions contradict that narrative, when your peace, your growth, and your detachment become evident, her ego starts to collapse. And that collapse doesn't come with fireworks. It comes in the quiet moments. When she sees your story on someone else's feed, when she finds out you're not alone on your journey anymore, when she realizes her name doesn't carry weight in your life anymore, this is when the questions begin in her mind. Was I really that important? Did he ever love me? Or worse, has he become someone better without me? And that last question, that's the one that stings the most. Because now, she's watching you become without her. The version of you that she couldn't inspire, nurture, or even recognize is now emerging. And it's not bitter. It's not broken. It's brilliant. But here's the paradox. Sometimes she didn't want you because you were too available, too open, too forgiving, too emotional. She didn't realize that those traits were not weaknesses, they were rare gifts. And now that you've withdrawn them, not in spite, in growth, she suddenly sees the depth she overlooked. The man she couldn't fully appreciate has evolved into the man she wishes she understood better. And this displacement she feels, it's not just emotional, it's existential. She doesn't know how to place herself in your story anymore. She's lost her role. Let's be real, young people don't truly believe you've moved on until they see you've stopped performing the role they cast you in. And when a woman sees that you've gone off script, that you're no longer playing the part of the man who chases, apologizes, or hopes, she realizes the story has moved forward, and she's no longer part of the next chapter. Some women will try to reach back in subtle ways. A like, a comment, a memory shared. Not always because they want to rekindle, but because they want to see if they still have influence, to see if the door is still cracked open. When she realizes that door has been sealed, not out of resentment, but out of resolution, that's when the real emotional impact hits. She feels invisible in a place she once ruled. And here's the final truth about that shocking. It's not about you moving on to someone else. It's about you moving on to yourself. Choosing your peace, your power, your path. And there is no greater loss than watching someone you once knew finally realize their worth without needing your permission. There's a moment, a quiet, sobering moment, when she begins to feel the very emotions she once dismissed in you. Not immediately, not dramatically, but gradually, like a slow burn that starts in the back of her mind and travels to her chest. At first, it's easy for her to ignore, but then it becomes inescapable. She's experiencing is emotional reversal. The point where your pain becomes hers, where your confusion now lives in her, and where the roles have silently switched. You have to understand something about human psychology. We rarely feel the consequences of our actions in real time, especially in relationships. The one who detaches first often walks away feeling empowered, unbothered, and maybe even justified. Tell themselves they made the right choice. They tell themselves you'll be fine. But over time, emotional narrative starts to unravel, especially when the person they left behind doesn't remain broken. When that person, you, begin to evolve, a mirror is placed in front of them. And in that reflection, she no longer sees the version of you she dismissed. She sees the man who has healed without her. And that's when her internal world begins to shift. The same way you once questioned your worth, she starts to do the same. The same way you replayed every moment, looking for where things went wrong. Now she's doing it. She remembers the way you looked at her, without resentment, without manipulation, just presence and sincerity. And now she's asking herself, why didn't I value that? But by the time this realization comes, it's already too late. You've changed. Your emotional availability is no longer something she can lean on. You've moved from confusion to clarity, from needing her to needing yourself. There's a deeply philosophical truth here. Emotional connection is only truly appreciated in its absence. When it's no longer being offered freely, the mind starts to magnify its importance. In psychology, this is known as loss aversion. We feel the pain of losing something twice as much as we feel the pleasure of gaining it. When you were present, you were taken for granted. But now that you're absent, your presence becomes priceless. It's not that she suddenly discovered your worth. It's that your absence forced her to confront a truth, she ignoring that not all men love deeply, and even fewer do so purely. This emotional reversal isn't revenge. It's a rebalancing. It's the emotional scales tipping back into alignment. For a long time, she may have held the upper hand. Emotionally, psychologically. She knew you were hurting, but she didn't feel it. She knew you wanted her back. She didn't need to respond. And in that imbalance, she remained comfortable. But growth is uncomfortable, and your growth, your detachment, has now forced her to sit in the discomfort you once carried. You're not chasing. You're not proving. You're not explaining your worth anymore. And the silence that used to scream for her attention has now turned into peace. Silence is no longer empty, it's full of you, your purpose, your stability, your self-respect. And this version of you is unfamiliar to her. It's foreign. And let's be honest, people fear what they can't control. She can't access your emotions anymore, and that inability creates internal chaos for her. There's also something profoundly spiritual happening. When you were hurting, the universe was refining you, breaking your illusions, molding your character. Now that you've emerged stronger, she's beginning that same process. Not because you wished it on her, but because that's the natural order of things. You gave love she didn't value. Now she's learning what it feels like to crave something that isn't coming back. Not out of cruelty, but out of closure. And I need you to really understand this. The goal was never to make her hurt. The goal was to heal. But healing always has a ripple effect. Your peace may cost others their comfort, especially those who underestimated your capacity to rise. And now, as she replays old conversations, late-night texts, and the way you used to show up for her in ways no one else did, she's realizing she had something rare. But rare things, once lost, don't return to the same hands. This is why emotional detachment is powerful, not because it's a strategy, but because it's evidence of growth. You no longer need her to validate who you are becoming. And ironically, that's what makes you even more desirable in her eyes. You have become the man she only now realizes she needed. But that realization came too late, because your energy has already shifted. Away from her, back into yourself. And if she ever says, "You've changed," don't argue. She's right. You have. You've changed from the man who begged for clarity into the man who became it. Something deeply unsettling for her. When the man she once had full emotional access to now carries himself with quiet strength and an undeniable glow. It's not about what you're posting or who you're with. It's about who you've become. The energy you emit without saying a single word. Glow up isn't just physical. It's spiritual, psychological, emotional. And here's the truth. Nothing unsettles a woman more than seeing you thrive in peace without her. Because your peace, your stillness, is deepening. It's a signal that the turmoil she once caused no longer defines you. You're not bitter. You're not broken. You're not even reacting anymore. You've reclaimed your power in the most elegant way possible. By simply growing. You see, people expect chaos when they leave someone behind. They expect that you'll collapse, that you'll spiral, that you'll spend months trying to piece together your shattered sense of self. They expect your identity to remain tied to them. So when you do the exact opposite, when you elevate, stabilize, and glow from within, it forces them to face an uncomfortable truth. You never needed them to begin with. You chose them. And that difference is everything. What makes it even harder for her is that your growth isn't performative. You're not doing it to prove a point. You're not trying to win her back. You're simply aligning with who you were always meant to be. That kind of transformation isn't loud. It's not full of dramatics or declarations. It's subtle, but powerful, and that's what makes it impossible for her to ignore. She can scroll past your posts, hear about you through mutual friends, or even run into you by chance. And every time it hits her, you're thriving without her involvement, without her validation, without her love. This glow-up creates a kind of emotional dissonance for her. Because deep down, she believed she was the best thing that ever happened to you. Belief gave her a quiet superiority. But now she sees a version of you that is more confident, more grounded, more disciplined. You're focused on your purpose. You walk with intention. Your eyes carry clarity. And now she's asking herself, was I a chapter in his healing, or the reason he needed to heal at all? That's when insecurity creeps in. Not because you're trying to provoke it, because your detachment exposes something undeniable. She was never the source of your power. She was a part of your story, yes, but not the core of it. And now you've reclaimed that core. You've returned home to yourself, that piece you now carry. That's the most attractive thing about you. It doesn't scream. It doesn't beg. It simply is. And that presence is far more powerful than anything you could ever say. Psychologically, this is a disruption of her identity, especially if she was used to you relying on her emotionally. Now she's the one watching, wondering, reaching in subtle ways. She might not say it outright. She feels it. That gap between the man she left and the man you've become. And the sad truth is, she likely only now realizes how much she wanted you to become this version of yourself. But not like this. Not without her. Your glow-up doesn't just highlight your growth. It also highlights her stagnation. Because while you were evolving, she may have stayed the same. Comfortable, unchallenged, emotionally idle. And now she's looking in the mirror and comparing herself. Not to another woman, but to the man you've become. Comparison doesn't flatter her. It humbles her. This is why I always say the real revenge is peace. Not pettiness. Not proving someone wrong. Proving yourself right. About your value, your potential, your path. You didn't glow up to win her back. You glowed up because you realized she was never meant to hold the pen to your story in the first place. And what hurts her the most isn't losing you. Realizing that your peace, your new energy, your evolution, it all came after she was gone. You didn't fall apart. You fell together. You didn't break. Built that glow she sees. It's the light of a man who turned his pain into purpose. So don't downplay it. Don't dim it. You earned every inch of that peace. And the truth is, your transformation doesn't need her applause. It speaks for itself. And then comes the final realization. The one that cuts the deepest. It's not just that you've moved on. It's that she no longer has control over your narrative. She's no longer the emotional reference point for your life. She can't shape how you see yourself, how you define love, or what you believe about your worth. Loss of influence is what truly sinks in when she sees you've changed. Not just behaviorally, but fundamentally. Because in the past, she may have had subtle control. Not overt dominance, but influence. She could shift the tone of your day with a single text, pull you back into emotional confusion with a casual memory, or reset your emotional boundaries just by reappearing after disappearing. Kind of control isn't about love. It's about ego comfort. It's about knowing that no matter how far you go, you'll still orbit around her, even if at a distance. But now you've broken orbit. You've become emotionally unavailable. Not in a toxic way, not in a defensive way, but in a peaceful, self-contained way. She's no longer the center of your decision-making. You're not calculating your next move based on what she might think, feel, or say. You've stopped playing the emotional chess game, and that silence, the absence of your participation, is what leaves her truly unsettled. What she begins to realize is that influence is not just about interaction. Influence is about access. When she could access your emotions, your responses, your vulnerability, she felt secure, even if the relationship was fractured. That access gave her reassurance that she still mattered. But now, she's met with a wall. Not one built out of resentment, but one made of resolution. You don't respond the same way. You don't flinch when her name comes up. You're no longer reactive because your reality no longer includes her. That's what stings. The version of you that once existed, the one who would have paused his world for her, is gone. Replaced by a man who has become grounded in something much deeper, his own truth. And that truth no longer requires her validation or approval. The old emotional contract has been dissolved. She can't trigger you. She can't bait you. She can't make you doubt your growth or your peace or your direction. And let's be clear, it's not that you hate her. You've just transcended her emotional relevance. And that, psychologically speaking, is the hardest place to fall from. Falling out of someone's heart is painful. Falling out of their story, that's devastating. Because now, she's on the outside looking in, watching a man she once had power over reclaim every piece of himself she once held. Here's what most people miss: silence is not emptiness. It's clarity, it's control. When you stop responding, explaining, or justifying your actions, you take back authorship of your life. And when a woman who once narrated your emotional highs and lows realizes she no longer has that script in her hands, she starts to spiral. Not because of what you're doing, but because of what you're no longer doing. She can't predict you anymore. She doesn't know what you'll say or feel, or even what you want. The emotional map she used to navigate your heart has been erased. And now she's lost. Not geographically, but emotionally. She doesn't know how to reach you anymore. Because you're not waiting to be reached. That's when curiosity turns into obsession. And not always the toxic kind. Sometimes it's quiet. She just watches, listens, wonders. She may not reach out. She may not say a word. She's watching how you carry yourself now.